Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Welcome back to our /MaliciousCompliance, where people follow orders to the letter to spite somebody. Guys, I hope you're having a wonderful day today, and in this episode, you're gonna hear 5 super satisfying stories. I do hope you enjoy them, and hit that subscribe button for future stories. Let's dive in. Gramps had just moved into a retirement park, with a lot that backed up to county land that was a nature preserve. His backyard was basically non-existent, but he did not mind, as he got to look out over the preserve. However, he did marvel at how his next-door neighbor's backyard extended a good 8 feet past his, giving his neighbor a nice space back there. Gramps tried to be friendly with all of his neighbors, exchanging phone numbers and the like, and one day, he noticed his next-door neighbor was putting down expensive pavers that extended from his back door all the way to the old fence post that designated his preserve boundary. Gramps watched the neighbor yank the 3 rickety fence posts out of the ground and move them back an extra 2 feet into the preserve, before pounding them back in. Then he started to clear the land, intending to gain himself more area for his pavers. Gramps used to work for the National Park Services as a young lad, so he thought he had better warn his neighbor of the consequences of his actions, so he heads out back for a little chat. The neighbor is immediately defensive, and before Gramps says much, the neighbor tells him, "You're new here. I've been here for 10 years. Mind your own damn business." So Gramps decides not to press the issue. Nothing happens that year, but the following year, when most of the park emptied out to head north for the summer, the county comes by to check on the preserve. So Gramps notices them going back and forth between his neighbors' houses, and the workers are pulling out maps and taking photos, making phone calls, and soon more guys show up. It turns out the neighbor has moved the post several times over the years, and in reality, his backyard is supposed to be even smaller than Gramps' backyard. To make it worse, the neighbor put pavers in the back specifically to park both his golf carts and a cherry red sports car back there for the summer, so the county will have to move them before they can do anything else. They tape a red notice to his front door and leave. Gramps goes over to read it, and it states that the neighbor was in violation of encroaching onto protected land. He has 30 days to move his car, tear up the pavers, and pay a fine of $11,000. Failure to do so within 30 days will result in golf carts and the car being towed and impounded. Pavers will be dug up and carted off at the neighbor's expense, and the fine will be increased for every additional day past the deadline. 30 days comes and goes, so a week after that, Gramps has quite the show as the first car and cart were towed. After that, the pavers were dug up and hauled off, and the old fence posts and ropes were replaced with metal posts embedded into buried cement bases, connected by steel cables. The whole process took several weeks to finish, and the preserve looked a lot more legit when they were done. A few solar cameras were installed so the county could keep an eye on wildlife and encroachers. Meanwhile, more notices were taped to the front door of neighbor's house. By November, the snowbirds were flooding back to the park, including the neighbor. This was Gramps' second show of the summer, as the neighbor reads all the notices, digging down until he reads the first one, then runs out back and starts screaming and cussing up a storm before running back to his car to dig out his cell phone. Gramps stays indoors to avoid the guy as he's frantically trying to unload his car and get everything powered up, all the while trying to get someone at the county to pick up the phone and give him some answers. He finally gets a live person and proceeds to scream at them while on speakerphone about his car and cart. So the call keeps getting kicked to other people because who wants to help a screamer? Basically, the neighbor is told to come by the county office to get this straightened out. 3 days later, the neighbor catches Gramps outside and asks if he was here when the county stole his car and destroyed his backyard. Gramps said he was, and the neighbor asked, "Well, why didn't you call me when you saw them putting notices on my door? You had my number. You could have stopped them." Gramps said he thought about doing that, but he figured the neighbor would have preferred him to mind his own damn business, so he decided against it. This tale was absolutely brilliant, guys. The neighbor definitely deserved it for being so rude, and damn entitled for extending his backyard onto a nature preserve, and doing it multiple times over the years. He was bound to get caught sooner or later. So, this popped into my mind recently. I used to work at a retail tropical fish store, and as weird as it is, we were very well known. We used to provide the aquarium with rare fish, and people used to drive from 2 to 3 states over if they were true fish people to come buy from us. I am 17 at the time, a female, and was an expert in tropical fish and koi. In fact, it was my job that summer to be the koi and outdoor pond person, and my job was not only stocking the ponds, but managing all the plants, caring for them, and knowing every bit of information on all the prices and various koi and goldfish we had. I knew diets, temperature ranges, places of origin, special breeds. I knew it all. They would even call me with questions on my days off. But that clearly did not matter to one customer though. He came inside the store and asked for some help with a koi outside. I happily agreed, as I was the only person not on my lunch break. Now, this guy frankly seemed to be put off by me offering to help, so instead of buying anything, he decided to quiz me for 20 minutes about the koi, goldfish, and pond plants to try to get me to admit that I didn't know anything. I answered every single one of his stupid questions, and some were really stupid. And at the end of the 20 minutes, he had the balls to say, "Can I talk to someone who knows things, like a man?" Full emphasis and tones on those words too. I say with a fake smile, "Sure you can. Let me get John for ya." Now here's the malicious compliance. John, name changed, was 75, retired, annoying as hell, and batshit crazy. Now, John is an expert in goldfish, but he hates koi and outside ponds. John, also like I said, is really annoying and crazy, but he had a soft spot for me, so we would always chat. I went inside to find John and explained to him that this customer wanted a man to talk to. John asked me why he wanted to speak to a man when I was the pawn point person, and I told him he clearly didn't want to speak to a girl, and John nods knowingly, gets this evil smile on his face, and goes to help the customer. 5 minutes later, I hear a man yelling in the parking lot. I run outside to find the customer screaming at John and cursing him out. He says, "What is wrong with you? Does nobody know anything around here? I will never come back. You are all horrible and know nothing about fish, and you're all terrible employees." I watched the guy hop into his car, slam the door, and drive off. I asked John what happened, and he said, "Oh, so every time he asked me a question, I said, I'm not sure. That's a good question though. I could go to OP and ask. She's an expert at our pond stuff." And apparently, he did not like that. I like John. He sounds like a really good guy. So judging by OP's comments, her and John sounded like best buds at work. She says, "He used to bring me mini pies every day after finding out that I liked him. He's now retired in Florida, but I think about how much we messed with customers together who were rude to us often." I freaking love that, my friends. I love how John had her back and they had such a wonderful relationship. I've been serving in a certain military branch for 5 years, and I'm nearing the end of my contract, so the give a care is completely gone. I'm in charge of inventory for specific pieces of equipment, smaller pieces that are used by many people at my job. From time to time, these pieces disappear. Most of the time, that just means things are misplaced. But we just got out of a certain period where we had many hired contractors at our job that tend to take things. Now, every once in a while, we conduct inventory of these pieces for accountability reasons. When we lose things, it looks very bad on my work. More specifically, bad on my bosses. So I prepared the inventory and was startled by the amount of missing pieces. I did everything I needed to do and presented the inventory to my boss. He did not believe that we had so many pieces missing and asked for me to inventory them again. So I did. I got the same number and put the inventory in his inbox. A few months go by and I get the same thing. He says, "There can't be that many. Do another one." So I'm very compliant and I do it again and again and again. This gets dragged on over a year and I'm starting to notice something. My boss is about to leave soon and he's deliberately pushing this off to the next guy to cover himself. So last week, I was sleeping since I work nights and I'm woken up. My boss tells me I have to do a specific survey with my coworkers that will get sent up to the head honcho. This survey allows the small guy to have a voice directly to the top. I tell him that I have night watch, but he doesn't care and demands that I go do the survey immediately and reminds me that he's my boss. Fine. Before the survey starts, our boss tells us that we need to be completely honest and these surveys are anonymous. Rad. I wrote down what had been happening with the inventory and directed where they could find the documentation of the done inventories. Fast forward to yesterday. All my bosses were fired and now I'm reporting to new people who are now fixing the issues with the inventory. My friends, so judging by the comments, a lot of stuff goes missing in the military, but one comment that stuck out was, "Believe it or not, in my country, there was once a missing jet engine from a military base. The thing was larger than an elephant, but somehow it made it out of the main gate. It turns out some higher-ups were doing some shady underground deals with some organized group, all for money that is." Guys, how would you even go explaining a missing jet engine that's the size of an elephant? It's not like you can sneak it out in your back pocket or anything. That just sounds absolutely ridiculous. So this was a long time ago, but I remember it clearly. We moved into a community with a tight space between our house and our neighbors, and we didn't like them being able to see into our kitchen. We put up a bunch of plants, costing thousands of dollars, but my parents thought it would be worth it. A week later, my parents awoke to the plants completely chopped down. My father was furious and marched down to our neighbor's house. He told my father that the plants were on his property line. Therefore, he had the total right to take them down. He warned that if anything were to go on his property again, he would report us to the authorities immediately. So later that day, my father called the company that put in the plants, and with warranty, we could have them replanted the next week for no charge. We made sure that there was no way that it was on our neighbor's property. However, a few days later, we caught them chopping them down at 2 a.m. We called the police upon obstruction of property, and after a chat with my neighbor, he decided to call a professional and mark the property line. My father agreed. A few days later, I got home to find orange tape in my neighbor's yard. Apparently, his fence was 11 feet over on our property line. We watched as he took down his fence completely furious. Within the next month, we were enjoying our new space and privacy in our backyard, and my neighbor ended up losing a quarter of his backyard. My neighbor ended up having to pay almost $10,000 for the destruction of our property, and we got to plant our plants again. That is a huge oof, my friends. If I was OP, I would always be sitting in that lovely extra space in my yard that used to belong to my silly, silly neighbors. Karma definitely works in mysterious ways. I work in a casual fine dining restaurant in a downtown area. Prices aren't crazy, but high enough that we don't get a super young crowd. I would say the average age of our dinner crowd is usually 30 to 60, although it varies more on the weekend. I only include this information so you understand why I did not initially ask for identification, even though you should always check. So Thursday night, a table of 4 comes in for early dinner. 2 Karens and their daughters. Excellent. I'm ready for them to split entrees and tip me 15%. They order a pitcher of sangria, and I tell them I'll be right back with that for them, to which Mama Karen says, "You really aren't gonna check these girls' ID? Her birthday was just last month. Aren't you supposed to check anybody who looks under 40? Now, she's correct, and of course I should have asked for identification, even though the girls were with their mothers. And I was being lazy by assuming that they were of age, since their moms did not stop them from ordering drinks. I agree with her, and tell her that I actually am supposed to check all IDs regardless of age, and proceed to look at all 4 of the ladies' IDs. Unfortunately, for Mama Karen, her birthday was a few days previously, and her ID had expired. So in the state of Michigan, it's illegal to serve alcohol to anybody with an expired ID, regardless of age. So I had to deny Mama Karen a glass for the sangria. She spent the whole night sipping on water, while others shared the pitcher. It felt good that Karen's antics backfired on her. Guys, Karen totally played herself on that one, my friends. I'm surprised she didn't go as far as asking for the manager and throwing a fit. I also had no idea that it's illegal to serve alcohol to somebody with an expired ID. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /MaliciousCompliance. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the stories today. If you did, hit that like button. And if you missed the last episode of our /MaliciousCompliance, an angry mom tells her daughter to leave and never come back, and she loses everything. Check it out if you haven't, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I love you.